Hashtag Burst TV week 146. Our first topic is coming from CNN.com, and it comes from the article entitled Transgender Swimmer Leah Thomas Wins 100-yard freestyle for the third title at Ivy Women's Championship, Ivy League school. And the topic is called Fair question mark, and it says even CNN anchor Michael Smerconish ended his segment on transgender rights in sports, acknowledging that he is a liberal and open minded, but unsure how this debate will conclude. Transgender female swimmer Leah Thomas has had a significant increase in placement after switching to the female team. Aaron Mack is, yes, a cisgender man who would lose childhood arm wrestling matches to boys and girls alike and feels there are too many nuanced physical differences among humans for there to be one right or wrong answer in this debate. The question simply is, where do you where do you stand on the transgender athlete debate and why?
I would like to comment on this. Um, Something that I've really seen a lot of people talk about when it comes to comparisons between the two issues when it comes to seeing transgender women play in all female sports and seeing Michael Phelps in his sport when it comes to swimming. His body is built in such a way that he's perfect for what he does. So why is there no one looking at him saying like why are we letting him compete with everybody else? He has a biological advantage. This biological advantage issue, that's where I have a problem with it because really these are I feel like transgender people who come into play. If you someone comes out as trans, they go on T blockers or estrogen, especially if it's a trans woman, and then she decides that she wants to play sports. There's a rigorous process already to see if you're even physically fit enough to compete in those sports, let alone compete at a high level. So I don't think it's an issue for transgender women to be able to play with women because transgender women are women. If they're better than the other women there, then that's not our issue to deal with. It should be on the other girls' trainers to get them up to par with the people that are going to be competing with them. I don't feel like there's really an issue here. I feel like it's just more of a. I feel like a lot of that the questions come from a place of transphobia when it comes to people who are afraid of seeing trans women in women's sports. So that's what I have.
I will step in and also say, as I was reading the article, I was like, it's almost as if the only way for transgender women to be accepted in sports is if they just constantly lose. Like they can't be winners. Like if you're gonna be a trans woman in sports, you have to, I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because it's ironic and sad. But you have to be a loser because if you win, it'll be like the only reason you're winning is because you're actually a man, you know? And while do, I am in the same boat as Michael Smerconish in that I'm not sure how this will end, and I always go back to myself as a child and the fact that when I was a kid, I would lose arm wrestling matches to every and anyone, regardless of gender. I was very open with that. And people would be like, "You just lost to a girl." I'd be like, "Well, actually, as a kid, I'd be like, I guess you're right, you know." But that's how it would be. Although, mm, And part of me was going to say, well, it was before puberty and maybe that makes a difference. But I think even after puberty, I would still lose to everyone who I had arm wrestling matches with. Anyway, I don't believe that women are inherently weaker than men. I just don't. And it's hard for me to buy that. And I think that part of it plays into, yes, Cory the Cloud, as you mentioned, people's discomfort with transgender in general. I think male chauvinism also plays a role in this because male chauvinism is real, and male chauvinism says women are weaker than men. You know, I don't know. ChrisSEE Marie, you're a cisgender heterosexual female. How do you feel about this?
Well, um, I was an athlete in high school, um, and I practiced with the boys. So I was trained mostly with the boys playing basketball and running cross country. So um, I really don't have an opinion about it, because I don't know what it's like to be a transgender person, um, in competitive sports nonetheless. Um, it's just competitive sports to me. I mean, it's swimming. Um, how do I feel about? I don't know. Like, I'm a little bit. It's like it's hard for me to have an opinion about something that I can't even relate to. I can only identify as a woman. So, but I'm also an athlete. So, that person competing against me would be pushing me to try to beat them, and that's just how I feel about that.
Well, there are plenty of cisgendered women who are actually on both sides of the fence with it. And it's interesting that you explained that you would just use it as an opportunity to challenge yourself to improve because
Yeah.
you mentioned that you used to practice with the boys and the men, so it's
Hmm.
like uh, I don't know. But again, I'm with Michael Smirkanish. I don't know how this debate will end. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, one can argue it's a like a, whatever. This person was born a man and has the strength of a man. They have a competitive edge over women because of their genetic makeup. But if they're going through some type of change or that requires some type of therapy, now, I don't know the person personally, so I don't know. I don't know. Would it be considered fair if this person is now a woman? I mean, that's just they changed their entire, you know, everything,
yeah,
and they happen to be a competitive swimmer. So it's fair because they showed up and they played and they won. That's my opinion.
yeah.
Hmm.
Although, I also want to throw in that I remember this episode of South Park, and South Park is always on the just right side of everything, in my opinion. And South Park, they they had a show with this man who liked to beat his wife or something, and in spite of the fact that she was strong and she was a wrestler, he was stronger than her and would beat her, and became a wrestler after transitioning or starting the transition process just for the sake of being able to beat her horrendously in the ring. And the conclusion of the episode was it's a really tough thing, and I don't know. Are you about to say something, Corey the Cloud?
It's just that's painful. Like that just you just dug up some like repressed stuff that I didn't know that South Park talked about. And it's just like I wouldn't say they're on the right side of most issues, but they do take from both sides, and they be like, "This is what y'all saying about each other. Since y'all don't want to listen, let's laugh about it right now." But
Yeah.
it's very interesting that that ChrisSEE that you brought up your perspective as a female because I grew up with four sisters, and all of them played basketball or soccer or what have you, and I played basketball, football, and baseball. And so when it came to basketball practices, my dad was our was our coach for a lot of the stuff. I mean, I used to have to play against my sisters, and they would beat me every single time. I mean, they're faster than me. They're quicker with their hands. They're a lot smaller, so they can get around me in different ways. Like there are a lot of advantages that I didn't have as a slow big kid that they do. And it's not because like, oh, it's because you're a girl. Like, no, you're better than me. Like you're physically fit, first of all. Second of all, you've been practicing this every single day because you love it. Third of all, like I have no idea. I don't want to play basketball. Y'all want to play basketball. I'm just here to spend time with y'all. So it's I know with my sisters like how they would combat it because they were starting to get faced with it once they got into college. Not necessarily when they were little kids because when we were little kids we all played together. We all played together. It didn't matter if you were a girl or a boy. You were playing upward sports together. You were playing um uh a lot of the rec leagues were unisex. They didn't really care. Like all the girls and boys were playing together at the same time. So it just mattered who was good that day, whose three pointer was nice that day, who could hit their layups, who could do the right technique when they were told as a young kid. So it really didn't matter to us. But I feel like once we got older, we are like society started to open our eyes to gender, sexuality, and the dysphoria that some of us might actually go through, and that's when it became an issue. When really there should be none. So
All right now. Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about it becoming an issue. It does kind of just feel like it's one of the issues of the day that we're going to make a big deal of. And like I said, if transgender women, and you don't hear as much about transgender men, which is interesting. You only hear about transgender women, which also goes back to the fact that you don't hear people talking about, oh well, homosexuality is uh, effeminizing. Sorry if that's the incorrect conjugation of the term, but homosexuality is making men more feminine. It's like, well, what about lesbians making women more masculine? And doesn't it kind of even out the whole thing? But people only see one side because they only want to argue from the side that they're able to argue from. Anyway.
And what if everything were reversed? What if this was a transgendered man competing and